The Dice Tower, Episode 608, Vegetarians and Ventriloquists.
The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. This episode is sponsored by Renegade Game Studios. Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them.
In today's show, Mandi and I talk about a couple of roll and write games. We revisit some older games in Shelf Staple, and we get your input on conventions that you want to attend in Victory Points. I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Mandi Hutchinson.
Hello, Mandi. It's lovely to see you again.
Hello to you, Suzanne. I feel like it's been a while, but it's only been a week.
I know, right? It's been the same amount of time between but I think it's just that we've been so busy in our personal lives, it feels like it's been a longer amount of time.
No, 100%.
And I have to tell you, I was kind of grumpy with you this weekend.
Ruh-roh.
Yeah, because I was messaging you and DMing you, and you were ignoring me. And I was very disturbed at being ignored by you until I realized you were actually doing something fun over the weekend.
Yes. So I was actually, and people will probably say, oh, I saw you there. I was at Can Games this weekend, and that's a big thing that happens in Ottawa. It's been around for a long time. Started off with a lot of kind of war games, RPGs, so it was a different type of gaming. There was some board gaming, but that's grown since. And so I was happy to, quote unquote, volunteer in the library, which means teaching some games and also playing them.
Oh, that sounds just awful. However, did you survive?
I'm giving away my secrets, but that's okay. I think it worked out well. Got to play a lot of fun games, lots of people. So basically my phone was kind of off to the side while I was playing all these games. So I apologize if you tried to contact me and I was not available.
All
there
right.
was a reason.
You're forgiven. Now, is it at Can Games that you got that photo that you showed me that has created a need? I have a need now, Mandi, because of that photo.
Oh, the photo. Yes. So let me start off by saying I apologize for sending that photo. I think that was highly inappropriate that I sent that and didn't provide any context whatsoever. And I know what you're all thinking. I am talking about Railroad Inc. I don't know what, Railroad Inc.
Dice
the
Tower,
game.
family friendly. That's what it is.
Get your minds out of there. It's a game. So Railroad Inc. I sent this picture to Suzanne and I said, well, wait a second now. I know of blue. I know of red. What are these other colors in the rainbow? So I think you said they were green, I think I showed you, and
pink.
Yeah.
There's a green and a pink Railroad Inc. Mandi, what's going on?
I didn't know about it. You didn't know about it. Whoa. Put on the brakes. What's going on here? So I'm putting this out here to say, who has seen this? Who has it? Do you know someone that has it? I want it. I will pay for it. That's not an issue. I'm sure Suzanne is more than happy to pay for it. We just want to find out where this is. Is it something new or is it just a color change? We don't know.
Yeah. How did this fly so under my radar? Thank you for putting it on my radar. Although now I'm upset because I'm not going to rest until I get my hands on these, because
we got to make some calls.
I can't. I got to believe it's got new expansion dice and more board. Oh, I'm so excited.
Super good. Like tropical railroading. Okay, maybe that doesn't work. But anyway. All right. Well, now that we're talking about roll and write games, we're going to roll right into the runway and talk about Pret-a-Porter.
Oh, my gosh. I'm going to let that one slide. Do tell. I know how you feel about this game.
It was still game related, so we're going to go with that. So, Pret-a-Porter, otherwise known as ready to wear. Yes, in the fashion world. So there actually is a game called this for those who are not aware. And this is a game that was originally printed. I don't even know the year off the top of my head. It was a while ago.
Well, you talked about it in a shelf staple a few episodes ago. So it's old enough to be a shelf staple.
Fair enough. So yes, it's not new, but it is coming to Kickstarter this summer at some point. I can't give an exact date or anything like that, but just to keep your eyes peeled out on Kickstarter for Pret-a-Porter, it is coming. So I am very excited for this just because, well, the theme, yes, I love fashion. I used to work in the fashion world for a long time. And the art is by none other than Kwanchai Moria. Have you all seen the cover to this game? It is fantastic. Okay, the colors, listen, as soon as I saw that, I was like, I don't even care. Take my money. I want it. Although I have played it, so I know what it's about, and it's actually very good. So don't let the colors fool you. There is some meat in this game.
I do not own it, and I am in.
Oh, you don't?
I do not, and I'm so excited for it.
Oh, I thought you owned it.
Mm-mm.
Oh, well, then you're going to be the first one to pledge.
Yep. Shush you. Don't call me out on the podcast. Come on now.
Oh, sorry.
All right. Well, I wanted to bring up kind of a downer of a topic.
Oh.
Let's do the downer thing before we get to roll into games played. Because a lot of people who follow the board gaming industry closely, because this is a podcast about board games and card games, but mostly the people who play them, is the United States government is looking at applying a fairly heavy tariff on board games and toys that are imported from China. Now, a lot of board games that are sold in the U.S. are made in China. And so, assuming that these go through, which they're set to go through very soon, this will have an impact on the industry. How long those tariffs last will determine the impact of them. But I thought it was important as the Dice Tower that we kind of bring this up and talk to everyone from a couple different levels. One, as a reminder, I work with Restoration Games behind the scenes. I'm not a game designer or anything like that, but I keep schedules and stuff like that. But I can tell you from a game publisher point of view, it definitely changes the way you have to think about things like components and timelines and cost. But from a consumer level, I want to make sure that people are aware that this is happening so that you can be informed consumers. This will especially impact Kickstarters that have funded but not delivered.
Right.
And so you want to be working with those publishers and make sure that they're okay and ask any questions and make sure that they're aware, because sometimes these things fly under the radar from people who can't watch every second of every board gaming news thing. And make sure that we're working together as a community to cover each other, make sure that we're dealing with facts, not rumor. We're not trying to scare anybody here. These are just the realities of what we will have to deal with. And I think we will see what the long-term impact is. I don't want this to be a big, long discussion, and it only impacts a segment of Dice Tower listeners, right? It's the U.S.-based ones. But I wanted to inform you, and if you have questions, you're welcome to ask them, email us. We'll do our best to discuss them and whatnot, and we'll just see how it goes. So keep your eye on that. Do some research, and I will tell you, I'm quickly becoming knowledgeable. I'm quickly educating myself on the things I never thought I'd have to research. Let's put it that way.
Right? I mean, we pay a lot in Canada when things are coming to us from the United States, or anywhere else for that matter. And I buy a lot of clothes and things online, and even it's crazy. I mean, I understand we have to pay it, so it's like you're talking now even more things that people have to pay. Like that's a lot. And I mean, that it can affect people in Canada because, I receive a lot of games from the U.S. coming into Canada.
Right. And distribution chain goes that it doesn't make sense to ship 2 boats from China to Canada and to the U.S., so you'll often ship to the larger market, the U.S., and then truck them over. And it will have an impact on Canada in many ways, too.
Oh, 100%. So everyone is a little bit affected.
Yeah. I'm sorry, everyone, that we kind of had to bring up a downer of a topic, but we all love our games, and the more informed we are, the better, right?
Absolutely.
All right, let's get off with the tariff talk, and let's talk games played, because I want to hear what you think of this first game.
So, what have you been playing lately?
All right, so now we're gonna roll on into games played. I know, but I had to throw it in there because we're talking about a roll and write. Yeah, you can say groan all you want, but it works. The first game I'm gonna talk about is Doppelt So Clever, which I believe translates to twice as clever. And this is kind of the follow-up to Ganz schön clever, which is, I think, Aren't You Clever? So just FYI, I was never clever in the first one, so I'm definitely not twice as clever. It's a thing, but doesn't mean I didn't like it. We will get to that soon. This is designed by Wolfgang Warsch. Artist is Leon Schiffer, and the publisher is Schmidt Spiel and, most recently, Stronghold Games. So it retails for about $19 Canadian, $20 US. So for those of you listening to the show for the first time, prices, just Google them online. We use Board Game Bliss, which has Canadian pricing, and Cool Stuff Inc., which has American pricing. So just to give you an idea. This game plays 1 to 4, and it takes about 30 minutes. It's a roll and write. This is kind of a hard game to kind of give you a general consensus. I kind of have to jump in a little bit. But first, we'll do like a quick recap of Ganz schön clever because it ties into this a little bit. Like your typical roll and write, you will have, an active player and then passive players. So in this particular game, you have dice that you're rolling and they all represent, they have a certain color, but they match areas on the sheet that you're trying to complete or fill in. And you definitely want to try and get a chain going. We're going to talk about that in a moment by filling in certain things faster than others. So the active player will roll these dice, and from these dice, they're going to choose, I need to choose one that I'm going to action. But there's a catch. If the die you choose is higher than all the other dice that are rolled, well, then you have to say bye-bye to the rest of those dice, and they go on this lovely silver platter in the box. I know, it's weird, but maybe it'll make sense.
I love that
in a
little
minute.
silver platter.
The silver platter is one of the many things I was a bit confused about, but it's cool.
It's got a little bit of a charm to it, I think.
It does, and it's not real, by the way. It is a box, so don't get too excited here. So you put those dice in, and then you action that die that you have by going to that area on your sheet, and it could involve writing a number down, which would be like the point value you'd receive at the end of the game, or potentially crossing out an area, which will work toward completing a row or column, which will give you points at the end of the game. There's a variety of ways. All the dice work like this with the exception of one. The blue die is different. The blue die you combine with the white die. The white die is a wild die, but when it's combined with the blue, you just use those numbers that are combined. And the white you can use as a wild. So basically as the active player, you're going to take one, action it. Whichever ones are lower than that number go on the tray. Whatever dice are remaining, now you're going to roll those, take one, action it. Anything that was lower than what you took goes back in the tray. You repeat that. So you do that 3 times. Then the passive players get to choose from all the dice that are in the tray. Sometimes it's like, yeah, and other times it's like, no. So, you got to keep an eye on that. So that's the general gist. And you play this for X amount of rounds depending on how many players you are. Every round you're going to get a little bonus to kind of help you along. And throughout the game, by filling out certain areas, you may get bonuses to fill in another area. And then by doing that, you're like, ooh, I finished this, which gives me a bonus to fill in another area. So it's a lot of that chaining kind of effect, and you need to have that. You also want to try and get foxes. Yeah, so here's the other part that I was like, I don't understand the silver platter and the fox, but hey, maybe I'm missing something. And foxes are important because they score. I kind of call them like a multiplier, but you want to have at least one because it's like 1 times your lowest score. Yeah, I know. And I forget about them all the time. Foxes and platters. It's a thing. In Doppelt So Clever, now that I've thoroughly confused you with the first one, is a little different. Actually, that's a lie. It's a lot different.
It is. It really is.
The reason why I gave that explanation, because some of you have never played Ganz schön clever, I wanted to give you an idea. So the mechanics of, rolling the dice, the active player, picking the 3, that remains the same. Nothing has changed there. However, the areas on the board, okay, it was a doozy. I have to tell you, that gray area gave me the business. I had to read that a couple times. And my brain was just not wrapping itself around it. I'll try and do a really succinct explanation of the different sections. But in this game now, the yellow section, so if you take the yellow die, before it was just like, oh, this is the number, you cross it off. Not in this one. This one's so different. You get the number, and you have to put a circle around the number. So you're like, oh yeah, that's easy enough. Yeah, that's not giving you points. You might be able to work toward bonuses at the end of that row or column. That's not points. You now have to roll this number again, potentially on a future turn or using an ability that allows you to have another turn. And then once you've rolled it again, you can cross out the number that you've just circled. Now it scores. So it's like a double hit to get that to score. So that's a whole thing. I'm going to save gray for last because I swear that's a thing. But it was really good once you got it going. So the blue one is the one that threw me for a little bit. So you have to start with the leftmost box to complete. And this is the one where you record the die value and it has to be lower than or equal to the previous one on the left. So as you push forward, you have to get, the number has to get, oh my gosh, I totally just confused myself. The value on the right, it's really weird, sorry. When you see the sheet, it looks like it should be the other way around, but it's not. Does that make sense? Do you know what I'm talking about, Suzanne?
Yeah, so you want to start with the biggest possible number.
Right, and go down from there.
And then the next number has to be equal to it or lower, but you want higher value numbers so that you can go a longer time. Because if you start with a 6, then you only have a few numbers where you can go. So you want to start with a really high number. But because it's blue, you combine it with a white die.
So it
so you
pushes
can
up
get
the value.
into that double digit.
Right. So just as a forewarning, when you look at the sheet, it looks like it shouldn't be that way. Like we had this whole discussion about the greater than, less than thing. Trust me on this. This is what it is. So yes, you want a really big number because you're going down. So that's one to think about. Then they had the green. This was a doozy. So this is where
They're all doozies, Mandy.
That's true. I'm going to be saying that a lot for this one. So the green is interesting because you have to subtract two values, and then whatever the difference is between the two becomes your points. You quickly learn that the number on the left should be larger than the number on the right, because you can, in fact, end up with negative values when you're doing your subtraction. So you want to make sure that the number on the left is bigger because you're subtracting the right to the left. So you want to have a nice positive value. So that's the green. Pink was interesting. So pink, you start, you can put any number, and actually pink in general, you can write any number you want in the boxes. Now there are limitations on some of the boxes as you push through, like it might say that it has to be greater than or equal to a specific number, but I think it starts like 3 boxes in or something like that. If you don't necessarily follow the rules, like basically following what it's telling you, you can put whatever number you want. You just don't get the bonuses that are underneath it. And bonuses are good because those give you the foxes I was telling you about. But it also allows you to, hey, fill in this section over here in the yellow or whatever. So that's really nice to help you kind of trigger and fill in more things. Otherwise, you're not going to really get a lot of points. And then there's also abilities, which I haven't really talked about too much, that you can get in the games, like rerolls, taking another turn. And there was another one where it allows you to take one of the dice that was removed and put it back in for your next roll. So these are some fun things that were not in the original. All right, back to gray. I was avoiding you, gray. So the gray area, so there's like a silver type of die. So you roll this die, you take it. This is one where you actually want a lot of dice to go back to the tray. And you can get a lot going with this. So whatever value is rolled on the silver, so let's say it's a 4, when you look in the silver area, you have a whole bunch of columns and rows. I think it's rows, potentially, where it's, or maybe the columns, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but it's all 1s, all 2s, all 3s, all 4s. And you're trying to complete the rows so you can get points. Basically, by putting the 4 silver, you just mark any one. And then any of the dice that are sitting in the tray that have been moved off because you picked this silver die with a certain number, you get to mark all of the numbers represented, all the dice in the tray. That could be really good. So it was a doozy to wrap your head around it, but once you got it, you're like, oh, this is great. At the end of, depending on how many players you're playing with, so many rounds, basically you count up your score, person with the most points wins. Yeah, I know. That was a lot for a little game, but it's supposed to be hard. I won't even tell you what my score is because it's so embarrassing. I see people like, I got 300. I'm like, so mine, you maybe just take off a 0. Okay, no, it's not that bad, but it's rough. Overall, I really liked it. I have to tell you, I really like the challenge. I mean, I still haven't fully gone Clever. Like, my score's okay, but this one was so much fun. We had so much fun trying to figure it out. I really like the fact that it was kind of implementing different types of math in it. Do you know what I mean? So you've got the subtraction now. Now you've got the, I like the gray where the fact you can use multiple dice, and it's kind of forcing you to say, hey, I'm going to focus on gray and use all of these dice because maybe you're putting all those dice back and you may not get another turn, but it's worth it. So overall, I really enjoyed it. It's definitely more burning on the brain than the previous version. But I think that people who are playing Ganchan Clever will be like, okay, this is more of a challenge. If you haven't played it, start with Ganchan Clever and then move up. I'm not saying you couldn't do this first, but I feel like if you do this one, you might find the other one really easy. I still find them both challenging.
Now, do you think that Doppelt feels more difficult because you're so used to Ganchan Clever that it's just your brain adjusting to the change in pattern and puzzle, or do you just think it's objectively more challenging?
No, I actually think this one is more challenging. You now have more things to consider, right? Mm-hmm. So now it's not just a number you're writing in there, fine, whatever. It's a number, and now you're, for example, in the green, you're subtracting. So It's like, okay, now I really have to roll a certain thing in order for this to be worth it, or you're like, oh, it might have negative points. This also forces you to use your rerolls, I find. Because I find in the original, I would accumulate so many rerolls, and I would never use them. But in this game, oh my goodness, it's like constant. Like, no, I gotta use it. It's a lot of the abilities, I think, are more usable versus in the first one. I didn't really use them as much. But no, I definitely think it's a bit more for your brain to think about because of that added step.
And I will just remind people that if you're interested in trying it, but you don't want to, there's also an app version of Doppelt So Clever that you can give it a whirl as well that may help usher you through some of the intricacies of like that gray zone and things like that.
I love the descriptions, by the way. Read them at the end. You think your score is like, yeah, and then they're like, yeah, it was all right, or something along those lines. So,
well, keep in mind, Wolfgang Warsch is, or I don't know if he's still doing his day job or not, but he's like a cancer researcher. He's a scientist that's there trying to cure cancer. So, fairly smart cookie. He's not here to play. He's here to challenge us.
Oh, definitely done with this game. So overall, I did enjoy it. You need to check it out.
Up next, I wanted to talk about a little card game called Ohanami. This is designed by Stefan Bendorf, and the art is from Christian Operer, and it's published by NSV in Germany. So price-wise, it's €9. However you want to translate that, I ordered this from Amazon.de, so I paid €7, but then €15 for shipping or whatever. But like I had to have it. And actually, what first drew me to it is the name Stefan Bendorf. Now, for those of you who don't know that name, Stefan Bendorf designed The Game and Quicks. And to me, Bendorf is a name that should be much more commonly recognized. I just think an incredibly clever designer, and I love basically all of his games. 21 also, Mandy.
Yes, very
which
good.
I know you love that one as well.
So good.
Anyway, that's my Stefan Bendorf fandom right there. Ohanami is a quick playing drafting game. So you get a deck of 120 cards, and they're numbered 1 through 120. And they come in 4 suits, essentially. There's a blue, green, gray, and pink suit. It's got this completely pasted on theme of some kind of Japanese garden. So there's a water suit, a grass suit, a stone suit, and a blossom suit. Fine. You are going to deal each player 10 cards, and then you are going to draft 2 at a time. So you're going to take 2, pass your hand, take 2 more, pass your hand, take 2 more, pass your hand, until the round's over. Now, when you take the 2, you play them in front of you, and you're building a tableau. You can choose to play 0, 1, or 2 of the cards that you drafted. You don't have to play them at all, but you theoretically want to. And you're basically going to have 3 virtual rows that you can play to. And mechanically, what you're doing is when you place a card, the rows are locked, the cards are locked, and then you can only play a card that is higher than the highest card in a row, or lower than the lowest card in a row.
Oh boy.
So if I play 2 cards and it's a 12 and a 100, I can only play an 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, or a 101, 102. Like, you've got to play higher or lower than the cards you have out in a column.
Right.
But you have 3 columns that you can kind of manage and balance. You're drafting cards, and then you're playing them as a tableau. Now, you can certainly, if you end up stuck with cards that you can't use or are useless, you can just discard them, and there's no penalty to you other than you don't get to play a card to your tableau. Now, after you've done a drafting round, you're going to actually score. So there are 3, you score after each of the drafting rounds. And this is where it starts to really kick in and be clever. Now, the card play I mentioned, that tableau, if you've played the game, there's some similarity to it, right? You always have to go up or you always have to go down. And Ohanami has a sense of that in it. But the scoring is different. So in the first round, you will score 3 points for every blue card you have in your tableau. And that's it. The second round, you will score 3 points for every blue card, again, and 4 points for every green card. In the third round, you will score 3 points for every blue card again. So the blue cards you have in the game will score you 3 times.
Oh, wow.
Almost, or unless you add more. And then the green cards score you 4 again. And then the gray cards score you 7 points per gray card. And then at the end of that 3 rounds, you also score your pink cards, which is just kind of a sliding pyramid scoring. So the more pink cards you have, the more points you have according to a chart at the bottom. And then you're done. The game plays incredibly quickly, but that scoring is so fascinating because, sure, blue cards are only worth 3 points, but you could score it up to 3 times. But then those gray cards are worth 7 points. And what are you getting past? And how do you balance that in your tableau? And how are you building out those columns so that you can get more cards into them? Because no matter what, more cards in your tableau is going to be a good thing by the end of the game. It also has drop dead gorgeous art. I don't know how many unique pieces of art are in here, but it's a lot. So there's just beautiful stone imageries and beautiful water imagery. It's a beautiful card game to look at. In fact, what makes me sad about this game is that to play efficiently in your tableau, you just kind of show the numbers and you cover up the art so you can just see the numbers so that you're space efficient. And I'm sad about that because the art is so beautiful. I want to see it all in front of me, but it just doesn't make sense to play that way.
Oh, no.
Ohanami is wonderful. It's just a delight. It plays so quickly, but you are making thoughtful decisions. There is hate drafting. I'm sometimes looking at my hand and going, oh, none of these are really great for me. Oh, what is this person after me looking for? Oh, they really need that 52. That would be a perfect card for them. Boink, I'm going to take it and just discard it. Is that nice of me? No. Is it fun? Heck yeah. And is it funny when they see me discard the 52? Yes, it is.
You do in slow motion, do you? Here we go.
Oh, absolutely. I make a little sound effect, too, right, as it's tossed onto the discard pile. So, Ohanami, unfortunately for any North American listeners, it is not easy to get because it's not in stores here. But I make orders from Amazon.de maybe more frequently than I should. So it's widely available and in print there. Stefan Bendorf, excellent, continues his run of just excellent small game designs. I love his work. Ohanami is definitely one that you should check out.
I think I had pointed this out to you one time on Amazon. I'm like, ooh, this looks good. I'm pretty sure. Was it recent?
Well, you were right.
Oh, look at that. I just looked at it and it said it looked really pretty, but it obviously sounds like a fun game as well. So how long does it take to play?
Oh, 30 minutes.
Okay, so it's not long.
It's super fast.
It sounds mean. Is it mean?
Not particularly. There's a little bit of that drafting a card away from somebody else that they could use that would be more optimal, but it's not super mean.
Okay. Well, we have some beautiful trees, potentially in the gardens or maybe at your castle. Here we are, stuck between the two castles of Mad King Ludwig. And some trees? No, I'm just joking. It's just
good one, Mandy. Good one.
I know. That just went south. I'm so sorry. Okay. Between two castles of Mad King Ludwig. Ha ha ha. I feel like I need to make an evil laugh when I say that. So this is designed by Jamie Stegmaier. And we also have art by Laura Bevan, Agnieszka Dabrowicka, Bartłomiej Kardowski, and there are more. And published by Stonemaier Games. I think I also missed a few people for design, Matthew O'Malley, and Ben Rossett. So I hope I captured everyone there. There were quite a few names. So this game retails for about $34 Canadian and about $38 US. This is very interesting that it's cheaper, quote unquote, in Canada. Plays 2 to 7, so that's a nice number. It doesn't see that too often. And it plays in about 45 to 60 minutes. So before I jump in on this, I should give you a little warning here. I have not played Castles of Mad King Ludwig. So I don't have that comparison, but Suzanne has played it. So if there's a reference that I bring up, I may refer to her to maybe explain a bit more because I have not played that game, but I have played Between Two Cities. This is a mishmash of the two. In this game, they talk about basically the king has a castle, demands a castle, and you are basically the builder who has been asked by the king to design this castle. Fair enough. You're like, oh, okay, that sounds like it could be fun. In Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig, this is a competition, sort of. You're cooperating a little bit to the people that are on your left and right of you, but in essence, you are trying to make a really big castle with some really cool things in it to score. In this castle, you're using tiles. So you're working together with your, I'd say, partners, because you are working with the person to the left, person to the right, to create this castle. What's great about this game, I really opened it and I saw, ooh, an organizer. That just screams to me like, oh, amazing. So they have an organizer there, and that's where basically all the tiles are going to be placed, and that gets placed out so we can use that to keep things organized, hand out the tiles, and then any tiles we're not using can stay in there. The game is played in 2 rounds. At the start of a round, you draw 9 tiles. And then in each turn, you secretly choose 2 tiles and you place them face down in front of you. And then the rest will go to the next player. So your little stack there will go to the next player. You're going to finish your turn by flipping your 2 tiles, and then you're going to discuss with your partners what you think is going to be best for your castles that you're trying to build, and you're going to place one in each of your cities. So when you're picking these tiles, you're thinking, okay, this could be good for the city on my left. This one might be good for the city on my right, but you can then discuss, but not prior to that, of how you're going to place it. So when you're building your castles, there are certain rules or stipulations that you kind of have to follow depending on the types of tiles that you're using. So basically you're starting with the main tile, and I don't remember off the top of my head what this tile is, but it's the main kind of room, and then you're kind of building around it. All tiles generally are placed at ground level, but there are some that can be placed below that. I don't know if this is running very similar to castles. Suzanne, you can jump in at any time. This is...
Yeah, I think that would be the
Right.
basement tiles that are low-level tiles, and that's what that sounds. Because I have not played this particular game yet, so...
So this would be the
sounds
downstairs tile in this game. So something very similar.
Mm-hmm.
There's no limit to the height or width that your castle can reach. They have to be oriented in the same direction, and they have to be placed adjacent to at least one other tile. So the different tiles they have are the food tile, which I believe is yellow, living, which is purple, utilities are orange, outdoors are green, and sleeping rooms. And these ones can be, sleeping is blue. And these can be placed at ground level or above. Then you also have corridors or corridor rooms, and they can be placed at any level, including below ground. And then that would be your downstairs, which can only be placed below ground. Something to remember, if you've not played this game, there are rules on where you can apply it, but this will carry through to other games that he has because similar concept. So you're basically going to go through that until you've gone through all the tiles. I think you end up tossing one, if I'm not mistaken, at the end. But there is one that there's tiles that you're not going to use at the end of it. As you're going through the game, once you meet certain requirements, it's going to allow you to get bonuses. So, for example, let's just say I have I think it's 5 of a certain type, or it'll specify, but let's say I had 5 food in my castle. On one of the castles I was working on, you would go to your little sheet and it tells you, not 5, 3. So I apologize, back it up. If I had 3 tiles that had a food symbol on them, I would look for the bonus where it says bonus for 3 on the sheet, and it tells me what I need to do. So for food, if I had that symbol 3 times in my castle, I get to draw 5 tiles, placing one of them. Okay, so that's just an example of what happens, and the same runs for the living, utility, and so forth, but they all have different bonuses. So once the 2 rounds have happened, we've cleaned up, we've done our castles, now we're going to score. Now on the tiles, you'll notice that there are symbols that tell you, if it's between this tile and this tile, you're going to get points, or if it's surrounded by these tiles, you're going to get points. So you have to pay attention to that when you're placing them, which we did not do on one of my castles, so all those lovely rooms we thought we were going to score, yeah, that didn't happen because we didn't follow the rules. So they didn't score very well. So this is why you want to pay attention to the tiles where it's telling you, hey, it needs to be surrounded by this tile, or it needs to be under this tile, or attached to this tile. You need to pay attention to those things in order to score, and then potentially having enough of them to getting bonuses. I think that I've covered all of it, and I think it's after the second round is over, then you score each castle. And this is where it gets a bit different. Your personal score, your final score, is the lower of the 2 castles. So you definitely want to try and build them up, both of them, as best you can, but in the end, it's your lower score that is taken. So that's the general gist of it. Does that sound very similar to castles? Like I said, I haven't played it, so...
No, mechanically it sounds more like Between Two Cities.
That's what
to
I
me,
thought,
But
yeah.
thematically it sounds very, very, very much like Castles of Mad King Ludwig.
Okay, that's good to know. So overall for me, I liked it. I definitely liked Between Two Cities. Again, I can't compare to Castles. I've never played it. My concern is it going to be repetitive? Is it going to be boring? This is my concern. Do you know what I mean? I had a great time with it. I really think the configurations, trying different things, I think that'll keep you entertained for a while. For me, I just don't know. I enjoyed it, but I don't know to what extent. And this is where I kind of fall into like a really weird category with this game. Between Two Cities, I don't own it. I actually had played friends' copies, I'd played the expansion, and I was okay with that. There are some games where you're like, no, I need this in my collection. I have to play it all the time. Yeah. And that's fine. And I have other games, Stonemaier games that I play. Viticulture is one of them that I play quite a bit. And maybe some people think that's monotonous. I don't. I enjoy it. Between Two Cities, I think it's going to have a certain group that will appeal to. And I've seen the same, between I can't talk. Between 2 Castles of Mad King Ludwig and even Between Two Cities, I think these are games that appeal to a certain type of people. I find this game plays better when you have more people. You can play at a lower player
Sure.
count, but it is one of those games, like,
Yeah.
I don't think I would play this with less than 4 people.
No, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And
I think that's how I feel about Between Two Cities. I am a huge fan of Between Two Cities. It just clicks for me. I love the tile layout. I love what the expansion added, quite frankly, because I think that was my problem with Between Two Cities. And maybe that's a little of what you're feeling with Between Two Castles
Right.
is I wanted more tiles.
Yes.
I wanted more variability in scoring options. But I think the expansion added that for me in Between Two Cities. I just love that it goes up to a very high player count, and it's not a party game.
Yes.
That's one of the, and I like the tile laying, the puzzle. I like the cooperative drafting, things like that. So I have a copy of Between Two Castles, and I'm really looking forward to trying it because I also love Castles of Mad King Ludwig's.
yeah,
It'll be interesting to see. I suspect I will enjoy it more than I will be a bigger fan of it than it sounds like you.
yeah, and I definitely think that. And don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it. But I think you hit the nail on the head for me. I just think I would have liked to have seen more variability. And I think might have heightened my experience with it. But you're right. It does fit that spot where you can play with a lot of people and it's not a party game. Listen, that to me is huge. So I think that's definitely a big thing. So overall, I enjoyed it. There are a few other things. Now, maybe there'll be an expansion like Between Two Cities. So Between Two Cities, you're right. I did actually find the expansion. I'm like, ooh, okay, it's added a few things here. So I enjoyed that. So maybe this might be the case here. We shall see. But as it is now, it's one of those games. It's nice if you want to have something that's not a party game to play with other players on your shelf. And then you can have that to pull out. Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig for me is a like. I think I'm not a love like Suzanne, but definitely glad that I was able to try it.
Cool. Well, Mandy, you didn't think I was going to let you get away with being the only roll and write discussed in this episode, did you?
Of course not.
And I feel for you all out there, just rolling your eyes at all the roll and writes that we talk about. I'm sorry.
Did you just say
But I'm not really
rolling
sorry.
your eyes? It's kind of like rolling dice.
Oh, Mandy, stop
I
stretching.
know, I'm making it the thing.
But I have to talk about Imperial Settlers, the roll and write game. This is designed by Ignacy Trevicek, and there's a lot of artists, and I will apologize for the pronunciations that I mess up. I'm doing my best. So we've got, and it's worth mentioning because I love the art in the game.
Yes.
Gregorz Bobrowski, Aya Yakimek, Tomasz Jedrzusek, Roman Kucharski, Denis Martinets, Maria Pekina, and Rafal Zma. There you go. Published by Portal Games because it's Ignacy, of course. And it's going to retail in the US for $30. It's on pre-order right now, but I was lucky enough to grab an early copy. I am a big fan of Imperial Settlers. In fact, if you've ever seen my top 50 video series, Imperial Settlers is one of my top 50 games. So a roll and write based on Imperial Settlers, I was just passionate about getting
I have
it.
a secret. I've never played Imperial Settlers.
Oh, well, I'm happy to teach you sometime. I like it. I've heard the complaint quite often that the typeface, the font on the cards is very hard to read.
Okay. Oh,
But other than that, I quite enjoy
okay.
it. In Imperial Settlers, you're going to get 2 sheets. You're going to get a big square common sheet, and then you get this smaller sheet that has 6 buildings on it or 6 little sections on it. And every turn, and it plays in 10 quick rounds, you're going to roll the 4 dice, the 4 unique dice. You're going to draft one of the ability tiles. Then you're going to use the dice for the actions and the resources that they give you. And then you move on. There. I just taught you how to play the game. Now, for the dice, there are 3 resource dice. And they have apples, wood, stone, and gold on them. Very thematic with Imperial Settlers. And then there's 1 worker die that has 3, 4, and 5 on them. And those workers are basically going to represent the number of actions you all get in a given turn. So if I roll a 4, I have 4 actions, and then I might have 2 apples and a wood to work with. You're going to use those results to mark off different areas of your sheet. And different areas, of course, accomplish different things. So on the main sheet, where you're going to do, you could do a fair amount of scoring, there is a row for each primary resource. Now, you may need 2 wood to mark off a box, because a little box has 2 wood in it. So you'll have to use, virtually I have 2 wood and I have to mark that off. Or you may have 2 little squares with a tomato in each. So you need to use 2 actions because you have to use an action to mark off each square. And then you have to have a tomato. So if you have 2 tomatoes and 2 actions, you can mark off each of those and progress. The farther you move down each of those tracks, the more points you will score at the end of the game. And if you make it all the way to the end of the row, there's a special spot with a larger amount of points, and you just feel really cool forever getting there. It's not super common from what I can tell. I've played the game about 15 times so far, so
Wow.
maybe in my next 15 plays, I'll be hitting those Imperial yellow spots a little bit more. Now, below those primary scoring ranges, there are these 4 little fields, and they've got little resources on them. And basically, you can access them by marking off rows above. And then if you need a resource, you can use one of your actions to harvest one of the resources. So you're like, oh, I'm desperate for that wood. I don't have it. Okay, I've unlocked that field. I can use an action there. So that's what that's for. Now, that's on the main big square sheet. On the smaller sheet, you have 6 little buildings. And similar, they have little squares next to them. Maybe they'll be blank. Then you can mark it off with a free action. That's fine. Maybe they'll have a tomato in it, a wood, whatever. When you have the resource in the action, you can choose where you're using those resources and actions. But when you unlock a building, it unlocks an ability. So when you completely fill in all the boxes associated with a building, maybe it's going to give you 1 free tomato or apple every turn in the future. You just get a free apple, period. Or maybe it'll give you the ability to re-roll, things like that. So they offer a variety of benefits. And you can choose that. Then some of them also offer endgame scoring options as well if you unlock that building. You play 10 rounds like that. The variability for multiplayer is that there are these tiles, and they may offer an extra action or an extra gold resource, that kind of thing, and you draft them. So the dice are rolled, the active player drafts first, then everybody else drafts an extra bonus tile. They all go back to the center, and the next turn, you draft fresh. There you go. That's the whole game. Now, I will say that there's also an advanced game that adds, the buildings have little shapes on them. And if you outline, as you fill things in on those rows, you can create little shapes like Tetris-style polyomino shapes. If you outline those, it strengthens that building's actions. So, if I drew this little L shape, then now instead of getting 1 free apple, I get 2 free apples every turn. So that's kind of a cool thing. That's technically the advanced game. You don't have to play with it, but I quite like it. Then on top of that, so that's the multiplayer game. There is also, this game is very much geared for solo play. And in large part, except for drafting those actions, this is a multiplayer solitaire game. I personally very much enjoy multiplayer solitaire games, so that is a pro to me. They very much geared the game for solo play as well, because along with the 2 pads that I've discussed, that village and that square one, there is another pad. There is a solo play pad. It has 48 unique solo play sheets.
Wow, that's tough.
So when you get this, each sheet has 6 different buildings on it. They provide a huge variety of gameplay options and bonuses or actions. It's immense. There's 6 buildings on 48 sheets. Do the math. Like, that's how much variability there is in there. And again, each one of those darn sheets is absolutely unique.
Okay.
It's amazing. I have not seen something like this in a roll and write game before. I absolutely love it. Each one provides a slightly different feel, a slightly different challenge in the bonuses that they provide. They make you prioritize differently based on where they're going to score you points or what actions they make easier or harder to do. Wow. It's great. The biggest complaint I have about this game is you are doing a lot of mental ticking down. So you have 4 actions. As you're marking off on your sheet, you just have to mentally remember, I've done 2 actions, I've done 3 actions, I've done 4 actions. And you mentally have a pool of 2 wood and an apple. You have to remember, I've used these 2 woods. I have 1 apple left, or that kind of thing. There's no tokens or anything like that to track your resources. You're not marking them down on a sheet of paper. And I understand that would be really fiddly. And from a price point of view, the more stuff you put in the box, the more expensive it's going to get. So it's more economical to do this as well. But that is an element that I was actually playing with my friend Josh, and he said he liked a lot of the game except for that. And so we're actually going to try the game next time using just some placeholder cubes I have lying around just to help track those resources to see if that helps. I have found that doesn't bother me as much, but I think it's a legitimate nit on the game. So all that said, Imperial Settlers Roll and Write, especially solo, I just love it. I just love it. I'm having a blast exploring these sheets, and I have laminated all 48 solo sheets.
Oh my goodness.
Because after you do it, you're like, that was a great challenge. That was different than the last one I played. I want to try it again. So Imperial Settlers Roll and Write, big thumbs up from me.
I'm glad you brought up talking about, oh, you have to remember these, things, these resources you have that you're using in the rounds, because I have such a short-term memory. For me, I need the visual or I need the sheet. But I guess you can always just kind of make your own adjustment, even though it's not provided in the game. Yeah,
Yep, you could.
So, yeah, good to know. All right, so the next game that is on my list is currently on Kickstarter. Yes, I don't do these very often, but I got to support my Canadian peeps. Woot woot. So when I say support, talk about the game. Whether I like it or not is a whole other story. I can't make those promises. But Kodama 3D is the game that I'm going to talk about. And like I said before, this is currently on Kickstarter. So by the time this airs, it should still be on there. Future Mandy here, coming to tell you that Kodama 3D is actually no longer on Kickstarter. I don't know if this is temporary, but after we had just such a lovely discussion about it, it sounded pretty exciting. It isn't currently available on Kickstarter. Hopefully, it will come back soon. It's designed by Daryl Andrews and Erica Boyoris. Art is by Kwanchai Moria and is published by Indie Boards and Cards. So it plays 2 to 4 players and in about 30 to 40 minutes. On the Kickstarter, I think it's about $39 US and $52 Canadian. So if you're familiar with Kodama, the original game, this is actually different. So some of the art's going to be similar, some of the concepts are similar, but the game itself does play differently. In the game, you're trying to build a tree. So every player is going to start off with like a tree trunk and you're going to build. So in the previous version of this game, it was cards. This being 3D, you're actually taking branches and sticking them into your 3D tree. So it actually will look like, it'll look like a tree when it's all said and done. And basically you're trying to do that. It's over so many rounds now, depending on the amount of players will depend on how many piles you have available to you. But you're trying to develop this tree and you have objective cards that you're receiving and you're trying to complete those as well because that's how you're scoring points. Before we jump into that, in the game, you're going to set up kind of a grid and each pile, basically you're having a pile of branches. So depending on how many players are playing, I know I played mostly at 2 players, I played at 3 players, but the grid that's set up will depend on how many piles of branches that you'll have available. Then what you're going to be doing is you're going to be using a little meeple. And I don't know if this is in the Kickstarter. I've seen some questions about this. But this is what you're moving specifically on the piles of, your tree branches in order to move to one to get the tile to put on your tree. So it's not the tile you move to that you get. It's the tile that you just left. That's the branch that you get to put into your tree. A lot of these branches have symbols on them. They have the little Kodama, they have, little worms, or they have flowers or these sorts of things. And you may be trying to get a run of a certain symbol or shape based on an objective card that you've received. There are other restrictions, like you can't jump over other people's figures that are on the board, so it might make it harder to get some of those branches to put on the tree, so you have to plan accordingly. So the actions in the game is to move your meeple, grow your tree, and draw a goal, but this is optional because there are some exceptions. So we talked a little bit about moving your Kodama meeple, and like I said, you can move, basically where you're moving from is what you're getting, and you can move in any direction. So you can move horizontally, diagonally, vertically. It doesn't matter as long as it's not occupied by someone else. The next thing is to grow your tree, and this is exactly what I mentioned, where you're putting a branch tile into your tree. It's hard to picture, but there's little slots in the tree where you're trying to kind of put the branch in. As it progresses. So you have to be careful about how you're setting up your tree and not tilting it. Sometimes people are really heavy on one side. I'm like, no, like it's going to fall over. So you have to spread the love a little bit. So drawing a goal card, which is the last step, it's optional because it may not be warranted depending on how you've played. You want to look at to see if the following things are true in order to get a card. So the feature on the branch tile you just added to your tree doesn't match the feature on the part of the tree you've just connected to. So if you had a branch and it had a worm on it, and you're putting another branch and it has a flower and there's no worm, this is where you would get to pick up another objective card. Or the Kodama on the branch tile you added to your tree doesn't match the Kodama on the part of your tree you connected it to. So the Kodama is like the little, I don't know how you would describe it, the little figure that you'll see on the box, but this is specifically, so they're looking at if the colors of that don't match, then you're going to pick up an objective. So these are some ways to acquire more objectives. And there's a display of them, so you can pick from, I think it's a display of 4, if I'm not mistaken. Those are the basic rules. Pretty straightforward. End of the game is when a player has 10 branch tiles on their tree, and then you basically add up the score based on the objective cards that you have. That's the general gist of the game. So it's fairly simple. This is much more simple than the original. Suzanne, have you played the original Kodama?
Yes, very much
Okay, so I love it, and I love the original Kodama, but it is a bit more fiddly, even though this one is building trees. I know, it sounds like I'm totally not making any sense, but there are a few things in the card game that are not here. It's a different game. Overall, with this game, you have to take it for what it is. It is extremely light. You're building trees. Literally, that's and you're building trees, but you're also trying to gain points for doing so. So you've got a few things to consider. So it's not complete just nonsensical. You do have to think about some things and how it's going to work. And when you have more players on the board, it's a lot harder to get the kind of branches that you need. Overall, I enjoyed the concept of the game. I definitely didn't compare it to the original because, like I said, it is different. I definitely think if you are looking for something on the lighter side, this will work. It plays in a short amount of time. The rounds go by rather quickly. I do have some concerns about the materials because this is a game where you're taking things, so you have a hole on something or kind of slits, and now you're pushing branches into it. And over time, because even the copy that I was playing was just a prototype, but by the time I got it, some of the wood was smushy. Do you know what I mean? Because so many hands have been on it, and then by trying to force it into this hole, it's split a little bit. So keep in mind, this is a prototype, but I mean, is this a game that's really meant for cardboard? I guess that's my question. And if it is, what is the longevity? Because as of right now, I think this is something that I kind of go, okay, what am I looking? How long am I planning on keeping this game? Like I said, I don't know what materials they've decided to use. This was pretty, it was okay cardboard for the game. But I definitely think the more plays, I mean, you've got hands that are sweaty. You're pushing it into areas that are really tight and it's splitting wood. Or splitting the cardboard. I know. It's these are things you have to consider. So I think that was the game itself. The people that I played it, we all enjoyed it. They're like, yeah, it's different than the original one. So definitely if you wanted to have both, you could. They do play differently. But the materials, I think, is the biggest hurdle that I would say, you know what? We're looking at $50, $52 Canadian. How many plays am I going to get out of this game due to the material? So I'm throwing it out there. Maybe on the Kickstarter, they may have some more insight into it. Maybe they're using a stronger material than I'm aware of. But that is something that I would be concerned about.
Well, my final game for this episode was on Kickstarter a while ago. It took me forever to get it to the table. I don't know why, but then let me put it this way. The first round of the game was on Kickstarter and I didn't get to play it, but the second round of the game hit Kickstarter and I backed that in spite of not having played the first one. On a wing and a prayer, I guess. I don't know. I have a problem. And I finally got some plays in. And that is Dice Throne.
Oh, you didn't say anything about rolling anything. Sorry.
Dang it. What a missed opportunity. Let's move on. Designed by Nate Chantelier and Manny Tremblay. Art is by Manny Tremblay. And this was originally published by Mind Bottling Games, and then Roxley Games picked it up, and they're partnering now on Season 1 and Season 2, and presumably Season 3. Season 1 is a 6-pack, and you can get that at retail for $50 US. And then for Season 2, I think there's 8 characters, but they've paired them up in 2-packs, and you can get each one of those at $25 retail. Dice Throne is a battling game. You pick a character, you get custom dice, you get some life counters, you get some cards, and then you use those dice to attack your opponent. And then whoever whittles the opponent down to below their minimum life, they win the game. It uses a fairly standard Yahtzee dice rolling mechanism. You get some rerolls and hope that you get the set of dice that you want. There are cards involved, and the cards can give you bonuses or extra actions. Sometimes you can use them as defensive things. There's a nice variety in the cards and how you can use them as well. From an action card point of view, they are also upgrades. So what you're going to get is a character, and then you get a little board. And this board has card-sized spots on them with pictures of icons that are associated with your dice, and those are associated with abilities. Let's say 3 lightning bolts will get you 6 points of damage to attack your opponent. Or 3 lightning bolts and 2 shields will get you 5 points of damage and you recoup 2 points of life yourself. That kind of thing. And there's 8 maybe spots like this on the board. Usually there's something you can do with your dice results. And that's one way you mitigate the luck of the dice that I ended up really liking. And of course, it's got that Yahtzee thing where you can re-roll to try to optimize your dice roll. There's also an ultimate move. And it's different for each character and it's thematic for each character. But the ultimate move is harder to get. You have to get 5 of a kind. Yahtzee! And then it wallops. It just unleashes havoc. It's a very strong attack, a very strong move or ability. And if you achieve it, it's intended to be very overpowered. And it is. But, ooh, it feels really good when you get to do it. It also feels really bad when it gets done to you. But that's the way the game's played. Beyond that, that's really it. Mechanically, it's extraordinarily straightforward. Where the interest in the game really starts to kick in is the variability. So between the sets, you've got 14 different characters, and each of those characters is unique. I found that their abilities felt very appropriate to the character, that they felt very thematic, and their token, there's just all sorts of intricacies to each character that I thought were interesting. And it's interesting to explore those to mix and match. How do these two characters play against each other? Do they play differently against this one, et cetera, et cetera? That's where a lot of the flavor and a lot of the interest kind of carries this game and propels it forward. I have only played this 1v1, but it does have like a team 2v2. There's other play modes that I have not yet explored. This discussion is just based on just me against you, rolling dice. I will say I was surprised at how much I enjoyed this. I can't quite nail down all the reasons why. It flowed very well. There's a little bit of the push your luck energy in re-rolling and trying to get what you really want. Of course, it's interactive because you're battling the person across from you. It's fun to explore the different characters and their abilities, so it feels different when you play as you're switching characters, which is really, really cool. But you don't have to learn new rules, so I think that that's wonderful. And especially Season 1 characters, it's fairly straightforward. Season 2 characters get a little more intricate. They have a little more abilities with some extra tokens, that kind of thing that you're throwing around, which is great. Dice Throne, for me, is a hit. I'm glad I finally got to play it. I've really been enjoying it. It is something in my collection that I can play with my kids. It's something I can play with my game group, and you should check it out.
So the first time I played Dice Throne, yeah, that was something. We played with like the full player count. I think it's like 7.
Oh, zoink.
It was. I'm not even mince words. It was terrible. I was like, oh, that's it. Never playing this game again. It was because I hate games that eliminate people. You're just hanging out, and drove me crazy. Yeah. So then after I was talking to a couple of designers, were like, try it with less, and I was like, all right. So I tried it with 2 versus 2, and it was much better at that.
Okay.
So I still enjoyed it. Cool. And then I've tried it 1-on-1. So I've tried a few variations, and I definitely think less is more. So having the 1 versus 1. Even the 2-on-2, I didn't mind as much, but anything past that, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It was not for me.
That makes sense.
So if anyone is looking to learn how to play the game, we did do, Michael and I on the Dice Tower did a full playthrough of Dice Throne, the original, I didn't know, of Season 1. Anyone who wants to check it out,
you
cool.
Can
go check
Excellent.
it out. Awesome.
I will just throw in, I forgot, the components. The dice are amazing. It comes with these custom trays that hold all of your characters' components beautifully together. The trays, the storage for the game is phenomenal. It's top tier. The one, the biggest complaint I have about the game is that the character art is really, really cool. The art in the game is great. The cards are bare bones. They just have a color and some iconography on them. And with such stunning cover art and character art, I wish, even though I appreciate that the cards are very readable, I wish they had had a little more art for, flair to them. But that's just my personal quirk. All right, well, there you go. That's Dice Throne. Let's go back in time.
Let's discuss those older games that will always have a place in our collections with Shelf Staple.
So we're going to jump in to some fabulous oldies but goodies. I feel like I've talked about this game before, but I think it was on my top 100, and that's probably why that familiarity is there. But I'm going to jump it off with Jaipur. So Jaipur actually was released in 2009. I thought it was actually older than that.
10 years? That's 10 years old.
Yeah, okay. No, that is 10 years. Actually, that is a long time. So there it
It's all relative, right?
Exactly. So this is designed by Sébastien Pauchon. The artist is Vincent Dutré and Alexandre Roche. Publisher is GameWorks, Sarl, and Space Cowboys. This is for 2 players, and it plays in about 30 minutes. In this game, I'll give you a brief summary. It's pretty straightforward. The game has goods cards, okay? And that makes up your hand, but it also has these camel cards that you can use. And then you'll notice that the tokens in the game match the colors of the good cards in the game. And that's because you're basically trying to collect certain amount of goods cards and kind of trade them in for these point tokens. So these are the goods tokens, which will be points at the end of the game. You also get bonus tokens, which will basically give you bonus points based on how many cards of a certain type of good you're submitting. So for example, if I had 6 diamonds, which are the red cards, okay, maybe it wouldn't be 6. Maybe let's do a more achievable number. Let's say 4. So let's say we're trading in 4 diamonds, the red cards goods. Then you would also get your red goods token in addition to a bonus token that showed 4 cards you've traded in, and you'll get those bonus tokens. Then you have the camel tokens, and I believe the camel tokens are when you have, it's been a while since I played this, so cut me some slack here. The camel tokens are the ones where, I think it's when you have the most camels out, right?
Yeah,
and that's literally it. And then you get the camel token for that, and that's another set of kind of bonus points that you get. So the game, if I recall, ends, so on your turn, before I even get that started, you get to take cards, basically pulling into your hand so you can get more of these goods, or you can sell them, which is what I described earlier about getting these tokens. I think that's it. Or you can take camels, and obviously trying to collect the most camels is going to get you that camel token. Not always great, in my opinion, because then you're stuck with a whole bunch of camels, but hey, it's a strategy that does work for some. The end of the game happens when all the tokens, there's a certain amount of tokens.
Right, when I think 2 or 3 of the stacks are diminished, are completely depleted.
Three types of goods. Yes, 3 types of goods are depleted. Or I think if there are no cards left in the draw pile, when you're trying to fill the market. I think those are the 2.
Oh, I don't know. You're probably right. I don't know if I've ever had a game end that way. We've always depleted token stacks, but I believe you.
Yeah, it's funny, actually. I don't either. I've quickly pulled up the end of the game there, so yes. That is one of the conditions, because I actually forgot about that one. So that's it. And you play several rounds. They have these seal tokens, or game of seal tokens, and basically the player who wins 2 of the 3 will win the game, so to speak. This is a really fun game. I really enjoy it. Actually, my mom likes it. She pulls it out. She's like, ooh, Patchwork, Jaipur, or what's the other one? Paperback. Those are the ones she'll go to and kind of rotate. Yeah, so she really, really enjoys it. It's always a fun one. It's simple, right? You're just trying to collect things, trade them in, get the points. I like that. And sometimes that's the type of game that you want. And this seems to stand up well over time because it's always talked about. So in my opinion, Jaipur should always be on your shelf. It's great to carry around. Now the box is a bit long, but hey, we can find ways to make it handy to carry with us. But there's a reason it's been out for a long time. I think it's great. I saw the cover on BGG and I was like, what is that? It's changed. It's very nice. It just looks different than the version that I have.
Well, they released an app version. So Asmodee Digital did Jaipur the app, and it featured all new art by Vincent Dutrait. So Alexander Roche did the original art, but then Vincent Dutrait was commissioned to do the art for the app. And apparently they've transported that art, or maybe it was always in their plan, but they've transported that art over into the physical version reprints now, which is kind of cool.
No, I think it's great. So if you don't have it already, or hey, if you don't plan on buying it, at least check it out, Jaipur.
Totally agree. I love this game. It's a favorite 2-player game. My single complaint really about Jaipur is it takes just a little bit of setup between rounds as you're restacking tokens and things like that. It's never really been a big problem, but I had to come up with something because Jaipur is a delightful, lightweight, quick 2-player game.
That's fair.
Mine, I feel like I'm wearing your hat now because I wanted to bring up Notre Dame, which is a 2007 Stefan Feld.
Okay, can I jump in here? And I swear I can hear people going, after I say this, I have this on my shelf.
Oh my gosh, don't say you haven't played it.
I've never played it.
Womp, womp. Well, let's see if I can get you interested in it.
All right. Yes, I'm listening.
2007, art by Harold Liske. It's easily available today because they had a 10th anniversary edition come out a couple of years ago. It's published by Aaliyah and Ravensburger. This plays 2 to 5, which I like. I like that extra bump in player count that I think still works well. And basically you're in France and you play the head of a influential family or something like that. And you've got a little deck of cards that are actions, and they're associated with the different segments of the board. Then you've got a little carriage that will move around the board. The board is modular, which helps the game scale. in terms of different locations that you can travel to get bonus chips and work for dominance in Notre Dame and things like that. It's a drafting game. You're going to have your own little deck of cards, and you're going to take one, pass, pick another card, pass, pick another one, and then you've got the set of actions that you get to perform in that round. You have a handful of cubes that basically serve as tokens for the game, and you've got those cards. Maybe you're going to play the cloister card, which will actually get you more of those cubes. Or maybe you'll play a cube to the bank, which will get you a coin, or to the residence house, which will get you just pure points, that kind of thing. The cool thing is you leave your cube out in that location, and the next time you play a cube there, you've strengthened the action. So maybe if you place your first cube in a bank, you get 1 coin. But when you place your second one, you actually get 2 coins, one for the new one and one for the pre-existing. So you can kind of build up strength in different areas as you're dropping those cubes. And that's awesome. There are special cards that are seated in different levels, A, B, and C each round, that give you a special optional action that you can take at the end of a round. And what you really have to watch out for is that these cards have rats on them. One of the disadvantages, one of the things you have to watch out, is that you're going to be getting rat infestations. When your rat level reaches a certain point, you're going to take a point hit. But of course, there's a hospital that you can drop cubes onto to reduce your rats and that kind of thing. There's Notre Dame in the center of the board, which is kind of an area control section. As you drop cubes there, you're going to score points for whoever has the most cubes at Notre Dame, but then they go out. You don't get them back, where normally you can get your cubes back. And then there's the coach house, and that lets you move your one little carriage token around the different roads on the board, and there's little tokens seated at all the intersections that you can go and get. And again, the more cubes you have on a carriage house, the more you can move around on a given turn, so you strengthen that action too. This plays in 9 total rounds in 3 phases, and then the game is over. You're dropping cubes, trying to balance getting prestige, watching out for how many rats that you're getting, moving around your carriage maybe to pick up bonus tokens, trying to take advantage of those bonus cards as best you can. And at the end of the game, you see who has the most prestige points. I think Notre Dame scales very well, which is really nice. I like that drafting mechanism. It works really well in this case for the action selection. And it feels a little different than some of other Stefan Feld's games. It's certainly lighter. It's certainly on the light side of a Feld. This is not Aquasphere or even Merlin or anything like that. Notre Dame, it's 12 years old now, and I think it really holds up. And I definitely recommend, Mandy, you specifically, give it a try.
My version's in German, so I definitely need to get the English rules going there. I actually got it in a trade for I think it was 10 or 15 bucks. I was like, this is great. And then I heard, did they not do a redo of this one? Didn't they or they're thinking of...
That's what I was saying. They did the 10th anniversary.
Sorry, the 10th anniversary. Okay.
A couple of years ago, yeah.
Okay, because I remember there being a few games within that, Notre Dame and some other ones that they were thinking of doing.
Yeah, you're right. A couple of the Felds and Rosenbergs that had been out of print came back into print.
So that means I just might have to buy the new one. We'll see how that goes.
Womp womp. But yeah, Notre Dame, it is a shelf staple.
If you're a fan of Lanterns, the Harvest Festival, don't forget to check out Lanterns, the dice game from Renegade Games. Look for it at your local game store or online today.
We asked, you answered. It's time to discuss hot topics in Victory Points.
Thank you, everybody who put their comments into our Victory Points thread on the Dice Towers Board Game Geek Guild. This episode's question is, if money and time were no object, what 2 board game conventions would you want to attend? And the votes were really interesting. Now, there's a lot of board game conventions, so it's a little tough to do a poll on that front. And I realized I'd missed a couple of big ones off the top, including Shucks, so I'm sorry about that, because we'll see a couple people wrote that in. But in general, Essen, the Spiel at Essen took top place for the con that people would want to go to. And then, actually, one of the board game cruises came in second. And I thought that was very, very interesting. And I think that says something about the kind of experience people are looking for when they invest their money in their time into a board gaming event. But of course, Dice Tower Con came in big and Gen Con came in big, but I think Gen Con came in fourth. And then we saw a lot of interest spread out between things like PAX Unplugged, Origins, Board Game Geek Con. They were all kind of in this same general area in terms of votes. So I will say, Essen, everybody loves the Germans, apparently. Everybody wants to go there. I agree. I get that totally.
Oh,
I mean,
so good.
Mandy, you and I have talked about this, and I think if you had to pick just one.
Oh, Essen, hands down. Sorry.
I thought it was interesting about the cruises. You and I are very lucky that we've been able to go on a few Dice Tower cruises, and it certainly is a really wonderful experience. It's relaxing, you get that nice mix of activities, and I like the Dice Tower cruise. I haven't been on any other, but one of the nice things, I've been really impressed with the library. There's just a plethora of games for such a portable situation. They have a ton of games that you can choose from, which I think is super duper cool. But let's see what else you all said about the conventions that you would want to go to.
So Madbana starts off by saying, I used to always answer Origins when asked what con I'd love to attend. Never been to any.
Yay.
Gin Cantor for life. But more and more, the feedback from the cruise has led me to put that at the top of my list. Bonus if it were sailing through Norway.
Oh,
or something to that
interesting.
effect. Which is cool, yeah. Also, the buzz about PAX Unplugged has put that up there as well.
M Space says, the only major con I've been to is Shucks in Vancouver, and I would go every year until it's full up. Vancouver's a great city. The venue is fantastic, well situated, and, well, M Space can stay with their parents, but not everybody can. And in M Space, are you inviting us all to stay with your parents? Thank you. That's very generous. But M Space says the vibe at Shucks is relaxed, and the people are friendly and cool. And everything is one giant space that makes it not a hassle to get from one place to another. They love Shucks.
Nice. All right. GSW says, I'll preface this by saying that I went to Essen last year for a day. Oh, and met Suzanne and Mandy. Hi. And might get to go again this year, although it's not
That was the highest pitch I've ever heard your voice get. Holy cow.
I'm sorry. I've been watching RuPaul's Drag Race, and I just can't help myself.
I got it.
Hi. I chose Tokyo Game Market because that would give me the chance to buy some games I otherwise never have access to, and other to stand for Shucks in Vancouver. That just sounds so lovely.
Well, and M Space would agree. UK Sweeney says Aircon and Harrogate. And I think Aircon was a great one to call out, and I didn't put it on the list because there's so many conventions nowadays, but Aircon is a good call out.
I like that UK Sweetie just gets right to it. So
No fuss,
Very
no
direct.
muss.
I like that. Exactly. Downriver Rick says, I'm the type of player who doesn't mind sitting down to play any game, so most of the conventions have some appeal. But at the heart of it, I'm an old wargamer. My first con was Origins 82, back when it was only a wargame convention. So the two I picked were WBC, and I don't know what that stands for here. Let's see.
Oh, the World Board Gaming Championships.
Ah, okay. World Board Gaming Championship and other. That other one would be San Diego Historical Games Convention. It's held every November and is hosted by Harold Buchanan, game designer and podcaster, Harold on Games. SD, or San Diego Historical Con, is fast becoming one of the premier cons for wargaming side of hobby in, I believe, its 5th year. That was a lot of new for me there.
No, and I thought that was so great that Downriver Rick jumped in with that, because for me, I am not a historical wargamer, but interestingly enough, or interesting to me, the little local convention up here in Washington State that I help host actually has it was started as a primarily wargaming convention. And it's great to remember that this niche of our niche hobby exists. And it has, in some ways, a longer history than almost any other genre of hobby game out there. And it's great for anybody out there that's interested in historical wargaming, that you should be aware that there are events for these types of games, that if you are avid wargamer or if you're interested in trying them, you've got options.
Oh, this is great.
Our dear friend Ambi says Tokyo Game Market because the food in Japan is great and seeing all the games there would be super interesting. The game scene is very different than I'm used to in America. And I will say that Tokyo Game Market is my Grail Con now. It is the con that I would love to be able to attend in person someday. It just seems magical. I'm not holding my breath because I don't think going to Japan is really affordable and all that other stuff, but boy, oh boy, I'd love to go.
Oh, sounds great. Me too. Take me with you. Jeff 321, Gen Con and Origins. Both have extensive amounts of scheduled events. I like to plan out all of my time in advance. The cons that focus more on open gaming rather than pre-scheduled, I don't enjoy as much because I find it difficult to join pickup games.
And I thought that was important too, because convention scheduled events are something that you can't get all the time. Some of the bigger events, some of the bigger games or longer games or games that you can't get your friends locally to play. Conventions is that are those opportunities to do that. But Mandy, you and I, when we go to conventions, we kind of play it fast and loose for the most part, unless we're scheduled to do something specific on a panel or at the Dice Tower booth. I don't know that you and I ever schedule anything at a convention.
No, I have a thing with commitment in general. So for me, I just like to, don't get me wrong, there is a slight schedule, but it's not like hard and fast unless there's a specific game I have to play with a publisher or just an attendee. But other than that, you're right. It's just go with the flow. And I find it easier to do at some conventions than others.
And we will wrap up with P. Jandy, who asks, what about Gen Can't? And bless you, P. Jandy, out there for mentioning good old Gen Can't, the unconvention for people who can't go to Gen Con. I know that the Gen Can't game design contest is well underway for a shockingly roll and write game this year.
Well,
of course. Using polyhedrals, though. So I'm very excited to see what comes of that. Now, Mandy, obviously, Essen was your number one. What would be your number two? I am having a hard time guessing.
Don't get me wrong. All of the conventions listed are fantastic and wonderful. I had a good time at all of them. But I think the Tokyo Game Market is, for me, one I would really, really, really like to go to. So that's more of like, I don't know if that still counts. Or if that's a separate like wish list thing. I don't know.
Well, you want to experience it. Okay, so let's put it this way then. Of the conventions you would go to, if somebody told you you can only go to 2 conventions ever again, you can go every year, but these are the only 2 conventions you can attend, period, in a year. Which 2 would you pick?
Oh, that's tough. Well, no, the first one is actually fairly easy. It's Essen. We know this already. That's a thing. And I always get asked the question before I move on to the second one. Why do you like to go to Essen and you don't really care for Gen Con? Gen Con for me is very different. I explain it even just from the opening of the show. When you go to Essen and people coming through the doors, it's like hot lava rolling down that hill. It's slow and steady and it's whatever. I mean, yes, fiery, burning and all of that stuff, but it just happens later. Like it's not like throwing elbows to get in. Versus Gen Con, it's like a frenzy, like fireworks when everyone's running all over the place and it's crazy. The vibe is different. So that I had to throw that in there. So that is why I prefer Essen. The second choice, this is a tough one. I have to say, I really enjoyed myself at Shucks. I have to tell you.
You're not in trouble. Like you don't have to force yourself to say that. I've heard, obviously, a number of people think Shucks sounds fabulous.
I don't, I've only been the one time, and maybe because it's in Canada, so I'm like, I feel like I'm at home, and it's out west where I'm originally from. It had a really great vibe. I liked a lot. I did actually like the fact that it was kind of that one room, so you weren't kind of looking for a whole bunch of things, and maybe it is on the smaller side, but I enjoyed that. Yeah, I think those would be my 2 that I'd be like, I'd love to do those consistently.
I think those are great choices. But it's hard to narrow it down, right?
It was difficult, yes. What about you? I have a feeling you're just going to know.
Well, Essen, of the ones I've been to, so absolutely my one top of the list wish list convention is Tokyo Game Market, hands down. For the cons that I have attended, and if I had to narrow it down, Essen would be number 1. I don't know if I have the same perception of that door opening. The door opening at Essen terrified me.
Really?
Because I wasn't in the main hall where the doors opened. I was in like hall 2 and the doors opened in hall 1, something like that. And I remember that what I noticed first was the noise. It was like you were on the ocean and a tsunami was coming. You could hear it. You could hear it before you saw it. And what Essen does is Essen doesn't keep straight rows. The booths are kind of set up in short rows, and then there's some booths in the middle of, they kind of stagger them. So there's no like straight line of sight. So I remember standing in the hall and I could hear this wave of noise coming to me. And then I just saw the people flooding on. Now it was very polite, but I just saw them fill all the spaces coming at me, like between all the aisles, just like I don't know, pudding being poured into a bowl. I don't know how to explain it. It
Okay,
just was,
but see, it's kind of like hot lava. Like it's going to be burning it, but it's like a slowly getting there.
but for me, Essen just, I tend to like a lot of the European, the Euro style, European
Oh, hi.
style games, and that's what Essen has. And then, of course, the Asian publishers from Taiwan and Korea
Right.
and Japan tend to exhibit at the Spiel when they don't come to the United States. So it's also an opportunity for me to get those games that I crave and love. This is a tough one, though, because I love playing games at conventions, but I think the other one that I've experienced now,
You're going to say PAX. I know it.
I think I'm going to say PAX
I
Unplugged.
knew it. I knew it.
I like the food. We had some good food there. It had a
Oh, yeah, the
nice
food
level of
was nice.
exhibitors, but the halls weren't too crowded yet. That kind of thing. It's a tough choice, though.
With PAX, it's because anytime I've done PAX, I'm always working, quote unquote,
Sure.
working. So when I say that, usually I'm at, a lot of the times people see me at Renegade and I love it. It's wonderful. Everyone's great. But I've never been in the setting where I'm just playing games.
Yeah, I can
So
understand.
I think maybe for me, that's where PAX is definitely up there. And I think that might change it. So this upcoming PAX, I will be attending in more of a game playing capacity.
That's exciting.
So we'll see how it goes.
But I will say, I did have fun at Dice Tower West. Dice Tower West was awesome. I played so many games.
It
I don't
was
know.
pretty good.
Tough.
No,
I'll
it
stick
was
with
good.
PAX because I've only done Dice Tower West once, but it was really good too. Alrighty, folks. With that, I think we will wrap up this episode of the podcast. Thank you again for chipping in to the Victory Points poll on the Board Game Geek Guild. We try to post this a couple days in advance to get your input. I should be better about getting it out a little more in advance, but
We'll try.
it's good to have goals, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Next episode, episode 609, Tom and Eric nudge in on my territory by trying to pull off their favorite roll and write games list. In related news, we may be featuring the first rebuttal segment on the Dice Tower in episode 610. What do you think, Mandy?
Ruh-roh.
As always, thank you everybody for joining us. It's an honor and privilege to be able to talk with you about board games and card games. Until next time, I'm Suzanne Sheldon,
And I'm Mandy Hutchinson.
and you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This podcast is sponsored by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Vazel Memorial Fund is an organization dedicated to helping gamers in need. Learn more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvazel.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Suzanne, Mandy, and Eric with assistance from Roy Canaday and Rob Searing. Our theme is composed by Timothy Pinkham and arranged by Matt Bellier, and hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc. Let us know what you think of the show by posting to the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, following the Dice Tower on Twitter, or by emailing us at dicetower@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower Network at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. All right, it is that time again for Two Truths and a Lie. So let's jump in to what we talked about last week. So I'll start off. I'm incredibly superstitious. I designed a board game, and I have owned leather pants. I know, it was a strange one. If you said I designed a board game as the lie, that would be correct. I know, shocking, isn't it? Actually, no, not really. I have never designed a board game.
I was in a very different mind space than you last episode. My two truths and a lie. I hate banana pancakes. I have a banana tree in my yard. And I love banana bread with walnuts. And the lie is that I have a banana tree in my yard. I live in Seattle, Washington, people. No bananas growing up here outside unless you put a lot of effort into it. And I hate gardening, so that ain't happening.
I see that you have a theme. I generally just kind of go all over, but I like where you were going there. All right, so new this week, I will begin with, I have 3 iPads.
What?
I know. It's a thing. I own a puppet, and I'm a ventriloquist. And I usually do not go to sleep before 1 a.m.
New for me, I was voted most likely to succeed in high school. I'm a vegetarian, and I dropped out of college for just a quarter.
Interesting. Wow, we really just went totally opposite ways there. There you have it, everyone. Good luck.
Thank you to our sponsors at Renegade Game Studios. You can check out Lanterns the Dice Game and all of the other great Renegade games at renegadegames.com.